Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Vitamin C's brought to you by CLNS Media, the CLNS Media Network for all of your Celtics needs. As usual, I'm your boy Adam Taylor, and as usual, I'm joined by my homie, my compadre, my co-host in crime, Mr. Tim Sheils. What's popping, Tim?
Not much, man. I'm happy that the West Coast trip is over. These late nights are killing me, man. We talked about it before we hopped on, but by the time I'm done with all my post game stuff, it's like 4 a.m.
I was talking to Keith Smith about this earlier today. I
Mm.
was like, I use like a scouting software for a lot of for pretty much everything. I watch all my games through there. I pull all my clips from there, and usually what I'll do is I'll download a whole game, and then I have a choice then whether I download the full game or I download the ball in possession. So all the timeouts, all the dead ball situations, they're all taken out. So you can get through a game in about 55 minutes without, and you can. It's not like the league pass one's trash because they cut it to like 35 minutes. It's choppy. This one, like, it's still a full game. There's just no timeouts and blah blah blah. But when it's a West Coast swing and games aren't finishing until like 2 3 a.m., they don't get uploaded onto that site until like midday my time. Now I'm usually 2 games deep or a game plus a rewatch deep by midday. So
Hmm.
I want the West Coast swing. I'm glad the West Coast swing's over too because it's been messing with my schedule, man. Not like it's been messing with yours, but it's been messing with my schedule, man.
Yeah, I could see it would throw everything off. I mean, overall, I'm also happy that they're just back home, just because I think that was a really tough trip. Well, obviously, going to touch upon that, losing those games to Golden State in the way that they did, and then that first LA game, and to a degree, that second LA game was a little bit concerning. But they're kind of taking this whole sink or swim approach, specifically from Joe Mazzulla. I wrote about that today for Celtics blog, but just kind of like an up and down. Like the first 3 games, you felt great about it. The last 3 games, you have some concerns, but overall, they came out 4-2, so you take it.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget, like for some of these games, there was no Al Horford. Big shout out to Big Al obviously his wife gave birth. That's why he wasn't with the team. If there's ever a reason not to be with the team, it's to be there with a newborn. You know, those early days, those bonding days are special, man. So I wouldn't begrudge that on anybody. Rob never came back, so they didn't really have Rob. Then they were running Blake Griffin, which is fine. Like Blake's been good. I don't really have a bad word to say about Blake Griffin at the moment. But you're running drop defense against the Warriors, and then you're running drop defense against the Clippers. It's just not ideal, right? Like, I get it. You want to run drop against the Lakers, fine. They don't have the 3 point shooting and the penetration to hurt you like that. The Warriors and the Clippers, they're going to cook you, and they did. They cooked Boston. So it was a tough swing. Those last 3 games definitely raised some questions about their defense, especially their versatility at the 5 spot. So we know there's depth there. There's bodies because they've managed to go without Allen Robb and still go on this trip and beat the Lakers and stay relatively competitive without Rob and Al. But the versatility, the question there has definitely been raised on, hey, it's clear that the Celtics are at their best when they've got a switchable 5. And I wrote about this yesterday for Celtics blog where I was like, Grant Williams, when he played the 5 against the Clippers for that stretch in the third, yeah, I think it was like a 4 minute stretch. He was at the 5 and he was switching. I get that you give up a lot of size. I get that Grant isn't a 5. Tatum's taller than him for God's sake. But at the same time, he can switch, he can defend up. He's very good at getting himself underneath big guys' hips and making it really hard to move him. And they just looked a lot more sturdy for that short stretch. And that made me start to think, like, do they need to start looking for a more switchable 5 as a backup? Then the question is, not really, because who's out there that's switchable at the 5 that you can theoretically go and get. Now, I do have an idea about somebody which we'll talk about towards the end of the show. Obviously, you're keeping the timestamp, so we'll be able to put the chapters in there for everybody. Chapters.
Hmm.
But for now, I'm like, yo, it was you come away with a winning record on a tough swing of away games. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think the big thing that I saw too when you talk about the versatility, I think it's they have specific centers that have certain pluses and minuses to them, right? Like you've got Cornette's actually a decent pick and roll defender, and he's got some size to him. And Blake Griffin, he's a great passer, not a particularly great defender, but he's capable of throwing his body around. He's giving you hustle plays and energy. And besides that, though, like they each have holes in their game, right? Like there's certain aspects of their game that make them bench players, that make them rotational bigs. They're not guys who are gonna be. They shouldn't hypothetically be starting games for you.
I mean, they're
And
minimum guys.
yeah, exactly though. But like that's what you're signing up for, right? Like these are
Yeah, of
guys that
course.
you're going out and signing for a vet minimum deal because they are still playable, but they're just not guys that you want to have starting for you. But because of the Celtics' health issues, because of Al Horford first missing games with COVID, and then obviously congrats on the new baby. So family time off totally makes sense. Happy for him. But then you don't have Rob either. So you're down and you're like top two options for the 5 spot. And so you're turning to Blake Griffin and probably in a bigger role than he expected to be playing, at least for consecutive games where you're giving him 20 plus minutes those nights. Then you're turning to Cornet. We really didn't see Noah Vonleh until I want to say he got tossed into that Clippers game when they were getting really, really shellacked there. And like that's what it is though. Like you're throwing him in garbage time when there's like
Did you
4
see
minutes
my
left.
tweet?
No.
So I've started threading like just passing thoughts through games, right? So it'll be like quarter one, my top 5 fleeting thoughts. And the one at the Clippers when they put Vonleh in was like, this is just an admission that whatever you're trying at the 5 is not working. Like when you throw Noah Vonleh in, like no disrespect to Noah Vonleh, he's quite mobile, he's a good rebounder, but you haven't seen him for God knows how long because there's just better options. When you're throwing Vonleh in, you're like, yeah, nothing's working, man. We're just going to throw him at the wall and see if it sticks. I was like, this is just an admission of defeat, man. Taco used to be the victory cigar. Vonleh is like we're waving the flag, man. We're done.
Yeah, it's either everything's. I think they used to say this about Scalabrine, and I think Scal used to say this where he was like, "If I'm going into the game, it's either everything is going, perfect, or everything is going like incredibly wrong. Like there's no in between. You're throwing him in there if everything is on fire, or if it's Geno time. Like there's no middle ground with that. So again, I'm interested to see what your option is in terms of going out and getting another big man, but you're in a tough spot right now where you kind of need to see like what this rotation will look like once you have Rob and Al back in the fold. I am interested to see if they would be willing to give Grant more minutes at the 5, only because I really don't see any other option in terms of versatility about having another big man that can switch. Like there really isn't another one on the roster. I feel like that I would feel comfortable playing there. Grant is just such a high IQ player that you don't lose anything in terms of floor spacing because obviously he's shooting the 3-point shot like an insane clip right now. Like one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Not only that, but like one of the best shooters on your team. And then in terms of what he's giving you in terms of being able to pick up stuff defensively, being able to read situations, passing, like he's giving you a little bit of everything. Like he's like a perfect spot for you in terms of trying to throw him at the 4 or the 5. But I just don't see there's any other options that are better than that on the Celtics. Like I don't really know if it's like they got another option there really to turn to consistently.
Nah, I mean, when you look at it, there's nothing wrong with playing drop defense in certain instances, right? And you can go to that during a game for sure, but you need to pick and choose your spots. And having your hands tied, which the Celtics did, especially against the Warriors and the Clippers, where the only option you have is to play drop, that's just a bad position to find yourself in when you're against some of the elite wings or some of the elite shooters. Now, we saw Grant go small against the Warriors too, and the Celtics looked a bit more robust. They were switching more often. They were just tougher to penetrate. Now, I'm not saying that Grant's the ideal option there. Again, Tatum's considerably taller. There's obviously some size issues that come with that. But at the same time, I remember someone saying to me the other day, Grant's not a 5. And I'm like, he's not a 5, but you try and telling Nikola Jokic that Grant Williams can't guard the 5. You know what I'm saying? You try telling Giannis that Grant can't guard up and he can't deal with big, strong bodies. That's kind of what he does. He's big, he's burly. He's showing that he can attack closeouts as well. So if you're running him in delay sets, where he's at the top of the perimeter, kind of just playing in touch actions or playing in what like delay and then going into some motion offense, and you try and run him off the line, Grant's just going to bully drive to the rim, and he's shown he can do that this year. So there's definitely an option to give him more minutes and start at least seeing what that looks like against some other bigs around the league. Now, by no means am I saying you do that when you've got Drummond on the floor, but Drummond's not a sharpshooting big. You can play drop against a guy like Drummond, same way you can play drop against Anthony Davis, because he's not going to be able to pop it from beyond the arc and give you a consistent 3-point threat. So there's that. The other option is playing up to touch, which is where your big man is just behind the level of the screen so he can touch the screener and then he can drop back. But you're capable of switching onto the ball handler from there. You don't need as much lateral quickness to do that. Luke Cornett is actually a lot better at that than what Blake Griffin is, just because Griffin's body's had a few more injuries. It's got a lot more miles on the clock. His ability to kind of flip his hips and change direction quickly has diminished over time. So there are different coverages you can use, that you can utilize guys like Cornett and you can utilize guys like Griffin. But against a team like the Warriors or against Kawhi Leonard in the way that he played in that game against Boston, the versatility or being able to call upon versatility at the five that can switch, that can stay in front of guys, that can rotate, that can play as a roamer, that can do all these different things defensively while still being an offensively valuable player for you, like that's invaluable. And you've got that in Al, you've got that in Rob, but both of those guys, one's aging, one you don't know how his body's going to react once he's back on the floor. There's no guarantee that he stays healthy for the rest of the season. Finding that value elsewhere in the roster or elsewhere around the league for a small trade makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, and that's maybe where they do actually dip into this tax. We talked a little bit on the last episode about maybe going after a guy like Cam Reddish, but I think after these last few games, it's clear that they need to add something there. Not because you dislike the guys that you have in the house or that you can't depend on them. I think in order to put them in the best situations for them to succeed, for them to perform well, you need to put them in situations that they're comfortable playing in. And that means not throwing them into the wolves in terms of like going against Kawhi Leonard. Like Blake Griffin got burned a couple bad times, but that's Kawhi Leonard's playing some of the best basketball we've seen from him in years. Like he looks great. And he showed like shades of what he was doing way back when he was with the Spurs. I thought he just looked so in control. He would get Blake Griffin on a switch and just go to work. It was pretty impressive to watch him do what he did. But again, like that's kind of what you're getting from Blake Griffin. Like, what you're going to get from him at this age, years and years of just wear and tear, and you lose athleticism with age anyway, but then you add in the injuries there too. He never was an elite defender to begin with. He was more of a high flyer and an excellent passer. So like he's got the pluses there, but having someone who can guard those switches a little bit better, not necessarily like you're not going to avoid playing drop defense. There are certain teams or certain lineups that you're going to have to turn to different defensive looks, or the idea of like throwing out Grant Williams at the 5 in order to give you something that gives you a little bit more speed. I think that's the one thing that I do like about playing Grant there, is because you can get out and run. And I think that helps, because when the Celtics are playing like a really high pace of basketball, I feel like that's when the offense is operating at its best, like to have that kind of change of pace. And that's sort of what I think can happen if you're going against a team like the Warriors. The only issue that I have there is like they're sacrificing a lot of rebounding. And in the game, the overtime win over the Lakers, which shouldn't have gone to overtime because they blew a 20-point lead and then came back with less than 4 minutes left, they got eaten alive on the inside. Now, I understand that Anthony Davis is having an MVP caliber season. Like he's been great for the Lakers, and he is still like an elite talent in this league, but they got destroyed in the paint. And I don't know how, like, I do get concerned if you do have any kind of injuries at all. Like we haven't even seen Rob on the floor yet. You've got to worry about Al's age. He's not playing back to backs, understandable, but you need something there. And like, it doesn't need to be Jakob Pertl. It just, you got to go out and find somebody who gives you just a little bit more comfort.
I want to make people wait for this trade proposal. It's nothing. It's not a name that we haven't heard before. I want to move on because we spoke about the center position now for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, fair.
It'll be disingenuous of us not to talk about Jason Tatum, right? I think that's disingenuous. It's avoiding a topic that everybody spoke about, so I don't feel like we need to spend a large amount of time on it because, you know, every Celtic show, every media member and his dog have had discussions about Jason Tatum over the last 72 to 4 or 5 days. I'm not doing the math to work out all the hours. All I want to say is this: everybody has a bad game. Now, to have your worst game of the season against a team that beat you in the NBA Finals, if you want to have a discussion about mentality or having some real estate in somebody's head, be my guest, have that discussion. I will not be partaking in that discussion. I think that Tatum has shown throughout the season and throughout his time in the league that he can be quite fearless when he's on the floor, but he can also get in his own head when he's on the floor. And I think there's a blend of both of those like completely perfectly encapsulated during the Lakers game, where he started the game fearless, got in his own head a little bit during the mid, like, you know, that third quarter. Soon as the Lakers started shutting down action, started taking away some of their ball screen actions and taking away some of their weak side rotations, Tatum seemed to kind of be like, I need to do this myself. And it's not really what you needed him to do. But then he kind of snapped back out of it, and we saw the Jason Tatum that's an MVP candidate. So I'm not going to say that he choked. I'm not going to say that he struggled. What I will say is there's a very good chance that the Warriors just have his number and they know how to guard him, or more importantly, they know how to take away his spots. For all the improvements Tatum's made at finishing around the rim and finishing through contact, if you're forcing him into Euro steps and then rotating late, so you really pressure the release around the rim, he's going to struggle to finish, because he's a very finesse finisher when he goes into that Euro step. He's not like a Giannis Euro step where you can feel the thunderous stamps coming through the screen, while bang, bang, body out the way, dunk. That's not the Tatum version of Euro step. Tatum's more ballerina style, you know, everything's flowing, everything's moving. So I think that the Warriors have probably figured out ways to make his life incredibly uncomfortable. And if that's the case, and then Tatum needs to adapt and then start showing some counters, you know, and that goes for the whole Celtics team. I think that the Warriors came into this game, Jordan Poole said it during his post-game press conference, that, you know, they had a really in-depth scouting report on Boston. They were very familiar with them coming into the game because it weren't too long ago they had a 6-game series against them in the playoffs, and their scouts went to work to put up an in-depth report about what they were doing differently under Mazzulla. So if that's the case, maybe it's a preparation thing. Maybe the Celtics need to start getting those type of in-depth reports. Who knows if they are? Who knows if they're not? That's beyond our pay grade. It's beyond our scope. But those are my thoughts on Tatum's struggles against the Warriors specifically.
Yeah, and I think that one's probably the most understandable. I think you can't really underestimate the overall mental weight of trying to go into that matchup. Like, that's just, it's a tough team to go against. They're super experienced. For all of the talk about like Steve Kerr getting handed like the perfect, like a perfect championship roster, like on a silver platter, like, you still have to be able to coach that team. And he's a good coach. You know, he's won multiple championships for a reason, beyond just the talent that the Warriors have. So I just think it was a situation where Joe Mazzulla's coming in. He has to, you know, fill in the shoes of Ime Udoka, in just trying to go against a coach that is one of probably, I think Steve Kerr is a top 3, top 5 coach in the league right now. Like, I think that's fair.
So have we spoke since that loss?
I don't know if we have.
Did I get my take off about, like, look, at the end of the day, when you look at Steve Kerr, everybody kind of thinks that he walked into a winning situation because
We might have talked about this actually in the last pod, I think.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Yeah,
that he walked into that.
I got that takeover off then.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can continue then.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, he definitely you still have to earn your stripes there and everything, and he did. Like, first time head coach working into that situation. But for Joe Mazzulla now, it's like, okay, Ime Udoka lost the series. He lost that series, and now I have to come into this situation and try and figure out how to overcome this team. And I think there's a mental aspect to it. I think Tatum overall, like, he will figure it out. I do have faith there, but it's also on some of the teammates around him too. I think they need some more play creation. That means guys like Derek White, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, they need to work more as facilitators. And when Tatum can't get it going because he's getting double teamed, or he's having two bodies meet him out on the perimeter, or he's got defenses collapsing when he's making it to the rim, they've got to find ways to get more movement off the ball in order to either get open for Tatum to find them, for open looks when they do collapse. And part of that's also on Tatum getting those reads off, but also just overall, like, they need more of that screening and everything happening off the ball. And that includes, everyone communicating on that level. I think the Warriors one, you can just kind of chalk it up to a team that was prepared. That was a team that was well prepared to face off against a team that they beat in the finals a few months back. And now with the Celtics playing the way they are, like, you're just going to have teams who are ready for you. It's one thing to be going against, any team in the NBA, but if you're going against the number 1 seed, and, like, not even just like the number 1 seed in the conference, but like in the NBA, you're going to do your homework. And there's a reason why the Warriors are where they are. It's because their game preparation, their experience, their ability to go in and, handle a team like that. Like, I was not surprised by that loss whatsoever. But Tatum's response has been fantastic, I think.
And then you say that you see that type of preparation from the Warriors. We saw it from the Clippers too. Like, the Clippers are a good team. Now, this was probably Kawhi's best game of the season. Paul
Yeah.
George was definitely up for the game. Marcus Morris decided that he was going to turn into just some old school 1700s archer and just be able to hit shots from miles away whenever he wanted to. But overall, the Clippers came out looking to give their best shot, and they gave their best shot. John Wall was good. Jackson was good. Like, Zubac is just such an incredible screener. The amount of space he creates for his guys, just because he's so broad, man, that when he screens you, you're really taken out of a play for a moment. Like, they're a tough team. So when you're seeing the Clippers come in and punch you in the mouth as well, it's understandable. As you say, you're the best team in the league at the moment. You're you're an NBA finalist. You're the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA at the moment, and you've got an MVP candidate on the wing. And then you've got another guy that's fighting for all NBA considerations in Jalen, because his game's just gone to another level too. Of course, you're going to give it your best. Now, when you're the Clippers and you have two wings that have both been on similar trajectories at some point in their career, with PG being more Jalen and Kawhi being more Tatum, they're going to want to prove their worth. It's going to become a little bit more of a, hey, we're still the big dogs here, and you guys are still the young guns. And it felt like that. It felt like Kawhi and PG were playing with a point to prove, to be like, yo, we're still who we are, we're still those guys. So, and then you come into the Lakers game. I think the Lakers, they're not a well-constructed NBA team at the moment. They don't have the spacing. They don't really have much play creation. Westbrook off the bench has been a big plus for them. I'm going to be honest with you, but they're a very defense first, offense 10th type of team, and then whatever's 2 through 9, I don't know what that's meant to be, but that don't exist either. So when they started shutting things down in the third and got out and run, well, of course they got out and run because that's all they've got left to do. The only thing is, for the Lakers, you saw it in overtime, they'd put so much emphasis into coming back and getting in front. They just didn't have the legs to finish it out in OT, where the Celtics did because of the youth. So the fact that Celtics dropped a lead there, I'm not surprised. A 20-point lead in the modern NBA is not a big lead. I'm not surprised. I think that shows you that teams are starting to get wise to some of the actions that Boston have run in. It's time to start pulling a few new ones out of the playbook, implement them slowly, and just add a little bit more diversity into your approach. And then I think at the end of the day, you showed grit, you showed heart, and Tatum broke out of his slump with a 44-point night. What more do you want? We can all hate and scream that, hey, you shouldn't have been in overtime in the first place, but this is the NBA, man. Teams aren't rolling over to let you win, especially in a Celtics Lakers game.
Yeah, and I think it was also just a step in the right direction for what you want the Celtics to do. Yet they had those two tough losses. Now, if they had lost that game against the Lakers, totally different story. But, you saw it towards the end of that Clippers game where their starters were in there until like the last 2.5 minutes. That's when they got pulled. But apparently Joe Mazzulla asked them, like, do you want to stay out there? And they were like, yeah, we want to stay out there. Like they wanted to try and play through it, try and find a rhythm, try and get back to what they were doing. And for most of that game against the Lakers, they did. They let the Lakers creep back into it. That kind of screwed them over a little bit there. There was a really big free throw differential for a while. I mean, like AD was getting to the line like crazy, and he missed two crucial free throws towards the end of regulation that allowed Tatum to come up, hit that mid-range jumper over LeBron, to send it to overtime, tied it at 110 apiece. And then the Lakers kind of just lost gas, like you said. I think they mentioned it a couple different times in the broadcast, which kind of sound like excuses making, but coming off of some kind of East Coast trip where they played a bunch of minutes, I want to say that they also mentioned that Davis and LeBron also played like every minute of the fourth quarter. Like both of those guys were over four, and overtime was wrapped up. So that's the benefit that the Celtics have. Like they've got the athleticism, they've got the youth to keep up with teams like this. I just kind of wish that they'd put the Lakers to bed a little bit earlier. I'm happy with the way that they responded. Jason Tatum having the game that he did. And they talked about it a little bit in the post game in terms of this whole sink or swim thing. Grant Williams talked about the analogy of like when parents will throw their kids into the pool and they'll kind of just be like, all right, like just sink or swim. Like that's how like they teach babies how to swim sometimes, is actually they just literally toss you in the pool and then see what happens essentially. And that's sort of what has happened with the Celtics, where Joe has said like on record, and Tatum said this after the game, I'm not going to save you. Like you guys have to figure it out. Like you guys find yourself like in a hole right now. All of a sudden you've let off like a 10-0 run. Figure it out. I'm not going to call a timeout for you guys to get bailed out. Like you guys need to figure this out on the fly. And you can't really argue with the results. They're 22-7 now at this point. Best team in the NBA still. Bucks are very, very close on their heels, but they're still figuring things out on the fly. And I am wondering when that could burn them, just because, there is going to come a time and a place where that's not going to work.
Now, when it comes, okay, I need to stop starting sentences with now, so, and if.
Okay.
It's a habit of mine because it's how I start a lot of sentences in writing. I think that the best thing you have to do when you're trying to figure stuff out is you need to give it time, right? So what I mean by that is we're not even 30 games into the season right now. And one of the biggest issues with that is making a decision on whether it's going to work now or not, regardless of how long someone's been on the roster, regardless of what situation they're in. You need to give it time to develop. You need to give time for coaching methods to settle in, new coaches, new assistant coaches, new players around you. I wouldn't be looking to make any rash decisions on what you do in the next 3 months. And I think that's why the trade deadline is always around February, right? Because you don't want to make those trades anytime sooner. So it all depends as well, right? Like you said, there's a lot of age going on for the Lakers. There's a lot of struggling in terms of shooting for the Lakers, but they don't have anything they can give up. They've
got nothing.
They've got a 2027 and 2029 first round draft pick. They've got Russell Westbrook's contract, and then they've got Anthony Davis. That's it. Realistically, you can package a Kendrick Nunn, a Patrick Beverly, and a Thomas Bryant package together and probably scramble about, I think it's about 18 mil or just under together and try and make a deal there. But who's going to want those three guys for somebody impactful?
Yeah,
and then for the Lakers, do you really want to mortgage your entire future until 2020, 2030 to win now. Like
No, I think they're going to be in a rebuild soon.
this is why they're holding, like they're standing pat. Do you get what I'm saying? This is why they're like, yo, we're not giving up. But then it goes back to what I said. If you look at it, they've got a rookie head coach, new head coach. There's a lot of new faces there. I think what they're trying to do right now is let things gel naturally and then make a decision on what's missing in a month or two. That's why the trade deadline's in February, because there's still more time. Schroeder only returned to the rotation about 6 weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? Like Austin Reeves is figuring it out. Patrick Beverley hit a couple of threes against the Celtics. I think that's the first couple of threes he's hit in the last 15 years. Obviously, I'm being facetious. There's a lot there that's good, but there is a lot there that's bad. Now, if I'm the Lakers, my biggest thing is, I'll give up these first-round draft picks, but I'm not doing it for someone over 30.
Yeah, they're pretty old at this point, aren't they?
Yeah, like, I want a young guy. So when I keep seeing these rumors like, hey, DeMar DeRozan to the Lakers, yeah, nah, for draft picks, bro. You've only got 2 of them. We're only in 2022. We're talking 27 and 29. You've got no draft picks for the next 8 years if you pull the trigger on that deal. And DeRozan's like, what, 33?
You might be a little older. Hang on.
Like,
now I need to check.
I'm not giving up draft picks for that. Like, you must be mental. Then it's like, oh, Westbrook doesn't hold value. He's a buyout candidate. Yeah, he was until he went to the bench and became John Havlicek. And I know that's sacrilegious because he's nowhere near as good. I know that. But he's a genuine 6 man of the year candidate. If you're telling me that he's got no trade value anymore, then you're not watching the same NBA as I am, because Russell Westbrook has rebuilt some trade value. So it's hard. I mean, this isn't a Lakers show. That's for them to talk about. But I just wanted to get it off there that, like, there are trades they can make. I just don't think people are looking at it from the lens of, hey, once you use these 2 draft picks, you've got none for 8 years. You know what I mean? Now, the reason I was a little bit thrown off when you threw this to me at the start of this conversation was because I was trying to figure out a trade that would work for the guy that I've seen floated around, and I can't find one. And that's made me sad. But the name got floated. So I was reading a piece from Eric Pincus earlier today with Bleacher Report. And one name that he said is most likely going to be available around the trade deadline is Mo Bamba. So apparently, I'll read it out. The Orlando Magic re-signed Bamba to trade him. At least that's how it appears. His role has diminished this season with the arrival of Paolo Banchero and the emergence of Bol Bol. Bamba, who can't be traded until mid-January, is on a 2-year, $20.6 million contract, but the second year is non-guaranteed. Orlando would like a first, but maybe looking for younger players who can grow with a young team longer term. Lakers, Clippers, Kings, and Raptors may have interest. I've added the Celtics in here myself because of what we spoke about at the top of the show. Bamba's on $10.3 million a year. So a deal of like Gallinari, Pritchard, and Cornet can get you there, but that's a lot of depth to give up to bring in Bamba. What are your thoughts? First of all, what are your thoughts on his fit? Like, do you think he's an upgrade as a backup big?
I mean, I think to a point, yeah. I mean, I guess my concern is he's been with the Magic for a few years now, right? And he was like a top pick for them. Like, he was a lottery pick. And now he's just trade fodder. And that's where I have the concern. I mean, I think you probably could have talked me into him like maybe like a year or 2 ago. Now I'd be more concerned about the price in that contract. My only thought process is if you could cobble together, I don't know if I would give up Pritchard. I guess it depends what the draft capital.
I mean, if you look at his performance last season as a starter, 69 games started last season, 10.6 points, 8.1 rebounds, shot the free at a 38.1% clip. He's shooting the free at a 38.1% clip this season on 2.9 attempts per game. Shot 38.1% last season on 4 attempts per game. He can hit the free. He can stretch the floor. The other thing to remember is as well, big men notoriously take longer to kind of develop. Now, if he was in the Celtics system, he's going to be a rim runner. We're going to ask you to be a bit switchable on the perimeter and defense. We're going to want you being able to rim protect players a weak side roamer when you're available. Then we're going to want you to be a lob threat and floor spacer and screener. That's it. Your role is going to be so defined, and you're going to be around big impactful players. You've got to remember as well, Bomba's been on the Magic while the Magic have been trying to rebuild. And for the first few years of his career, he weren't seeing many minutes because he was playing behind Vucevic. So I think there's like, for me, it's just hey, you want some versatility, some size, and some speed? Mo Bamba's available.
I mean, if you could,
he's a perfect fit by no means, and I'm more than happy for the pushback because it's warranted and it's fair.
I guess it just comes down to what you'd have to cobble together. I mean, I'm fine with giving up draft capital if you believe in a guy and you think that he's a good fit, or you think that acquiring someone like this is going to.
Under no circumstances is he worth a first round pick.
No, but I mean, I'm just wondering like what the asking price would be for Orlando. Like, would they just take like 2 seconds and trade filler, or would it take a piece like Pritchard? Because you
can't get Bamba without matching salary. His salary is too high to go into a trade exception.
I was gonna say that, but so I think this financially would work. I think the only thing that is going to happen now is you have to wait until December 5th. So tomorrow, all of these restrictions will go away.
Except for Bamba, who can't be traded till mid-Jan.
Yeah. Gallinari, Vonleh, and Jackson, I think, makes up enough money. That's $10.1 million. Bamba's $10.3 million.
So you eat the $200K.
Yeah. And I think that's covered by the. I think that would be covered in terms of, I forget the exact amount of salary. It's like 110% of the incoming salary or outgoing salary plus $100K. So I think you could make that happen in terms of cobbling those 3 contracts together.
And then they could play the Mo Bamba song.
Yeah, they'll probably play that a lot. It would be really annoying. It'll be like an elaborate bit. I mean,
I don't know, because they don't play the Tatum song.
Yeah, thankfully. It's not like
shoot Jason Tatum. My money long. Jason Tatum.
I mean, I don't hate the Mo Bamba idea. I do think that they need another young center, right?
The only thing is there's too much crossover with Rob. Like, you don't want carbon copies of guys, right?
I mean, of Rob, yes, I would love like 2. If the Celtics could somehow magically have 2 Rob Williams that they could just cycle in like endlessly, that would be amazing.
That's just but in terms of health, that's 1 Robert Williams.
Yeah. That's true. Unless they do like the DBZ, like gotta unify here.
Oh god. It's 1 Rob.
Man. 1 Rob. At the end of the day, I don't hate the idea. Again, it just always comes down to like what you have to give up in terms of just trying to cobble together salary. That's where the Celtics are at this point. Like, they can't go out and just trade for anybody. Like, they really have to do some cap gymnastics. And it really depends on if they are willing to just go ahead and eat the optics of trading away Gallinari while he's injured.
I don't want them to do that.
I don't want them to do it either. And that's where you kind of get into this tough spot where all of the pieces that the Celtics have in terms of if they're trying to get anyone that's getting paid over like $6.7 million or something like that, they'd have to give up a major piece to make it work financially. And that's just not going to happen right now. So that's kind of where they're at. And I think the last Juancho TP is, I think, like roughly like 6.7 million or something like that.
Yeah, it's nowhere near big enough to make the deal. That's the problem.
No. Yeah. And that's where I think you have to look at a guy who's fallen out of like rotation or favor somewhere. And it's either a guy who's on a veteran minimum deal or someone that can, someone who's on a rookie scale contract. I always keep coming back to it because I think it's just a good idea would be going after Vanderbilt. But I just don't think that he might be available for a team like Utah. But they are starting to tank, but he's a young player, so I don't know.
Vanderbilt has been excellent for Utah, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like,
really,
why?
Really
why would they give him up?
Like, at the end of the day, a rebuilding team wants guys like him that they can build around, that has upside to keep developing. I do not see any reason on God's green earth that Jared Vanderbilt would be available for trade.
Exactly, yeah. But he's like the kind of player that you'd want to target, like in terms of salary, in terms of fit, would just make a lot of sense. But we can
Or
always dream.
we can always just try and get Wendell Carter Jr.
Ooh.
That's not going to happen.
No.
Orlando is very happy with him.
No.
Okay.
No.
With that being said, we're trying not to do too much trade talk. We've done it on running two shows straight, so we won't do it on the next one. We promise, unless a trade actually happens, at which point we will have no choice.
Yeah, we won't shut up about it then.
Yeah, because then we have to do the analysis.
We have to do our duty.
Until then, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, then please share it with other people. Let other people find us the joy of the vitamin C's. Everybody needs their vitamins. Till next time, have a great weekend, y'all.
Cheers.
Oh, no, you'll see us again on Friday.
That's true. Also true.
I thought it was Friday. Until next time, we'll catch you Friday.